In the roller coaster ride that has become the mayor's race, a certain Queens assemblyman is still in the front car. But can Donald Trump re-engineer the ride? The Point starts right now. It is a wild ride, and you can only ask Zohran Mamdani what's next. So he's here, and I'm going to ask him what's next. But I want to talk to you about the events where we now know that the White House is getting involved in the race. And part of it, I think, is that business leaders in New York have been trying to speak to the president and his advisors. I wonder what you think you can do to win them over and understand your campaign.
You know, I've been sharing with business leaders across the city about how my vision for making the most expensive city in the United States of America affordable is one that actually benefits all of us. Because so many of the most innovative businesses in this city are only able to be innovative if they can attract talent, young talent, that can actually live here. And what we hear from so many young people is the cost of housing, the cost of childcare, the cost even of public transit is such that they have to consider other cities. And so this city, making this a living, breathing testament of what's possible, it would benefit our entire economy.
So why do you think they're so afraid of you?
You know, I think part of it is because of the threat that we pose to the movement behind Donald Trump. It's a movement of division. It's a movement of diagnosing despair only to then exploit it. And it's one that would cast into sharp relief the fact that Donald Trump ran an entire campaign about lowering the cost of groceries, about making the cost of living cheaper. And he's only exacerbated those same costs. And what separates us from that is that we would actually deliver on this message. And that would be something that would force the question of what he's been doing since he's been in office.
Do you think that you have to change your message a little bit to appeal to these business leaders, to make them understand that you get where they're coming from?
I think it's the same message that I've been sharing since the beginning. It's a willingness to have that conversation with anyone, whether on a sidewalk or a C-suite, and also knowing that there will be those who will oppose this agenda, and yet this is also a city for them, and we continue to want to work together.
You know, campaigns change over time, and I know that what brought you to the dance was your focus on affordability, and it was an appealing message. But now with the increase in shootings in Brooklyn and in the Bronx, people are now focusing on public safety. So I'm wondering, what would your public safety plan look like? Explain it to our viewers.
Absolutely. You know, prior to the West Indian Day Parade, I visited Little Caribbean, and I spoke to a number of residents in East Flatbush who were sharing their concerns around gun violence. And I met a number of New Yorkers who were part of the crisis management system, part of a cure violence approach to dealing with gun violence. And they told me how important it is to have a comprehensive approach to reducing gun violence and, frankly, rooting it out of the entirety of our city. And that it would take working with the police, working with the crisis management system, working with a cure violence approach, all of these things to deliver that safety. And then I went to the Bronx just a few days ago, and I met with a program called Guns Down, Life Up. And this is a program based in Lincoln Hospital. And one of the young men I met, he had actually been attacked and was in Lincoln Hospital, and he was thinking about retaliating. And that's when he learned about this program. They recruited him to join the program. And instead of another act of violence, he's instead now a mentor to others who have just gone through that same process.
But here's my question. You also talk about establishing a division of public safety that would have social workers and psychiatric workers respond. What would that look like in New York City, in your mind?
So right now, a lot of the things that give New Yorkers concern is especially happening in our subway system. And these are not incidents that might necessarily be categorized in CompStat or as a crime, but they are moments that showcase a mental health crisis, a homelessness crisis. And we have asked police officers to be the ones responsible and to respond to that, even though these are the same officers who signed up to respond to shootings, to respond to murders, to respond to serious crimes across our city. So our vision for a Department of Community Safety, the DCS, is that we would have teams of dedicated mental health outreach workers that we deploy to the 100 stations with the highest levels of mental health crises to respond to those incidents and get those New Yorkers out of the subway system and to the services that they actually need.
But I have two questions about that. So right now, the NYPD, according to testimony at the City Council, responds to about 180,000 calls involving emotionally disturbed people, EDPs. So how many social workers and experts do you think you would have to hire in order to deal with that level of call so that police wouldn't have to respond?
We have put together a proposal for the entirety of this department that puts the cost at about $1 billion for this new department.
How many people would you be able to find them?
We are confident of our ability to find them because we know that if you actually pay people what they're worth for this job, there are so many who are interested in responding. And we have the benefit of learning from the model in Oregon, where they decoupled mental health response from the police department, and they found they were able to respond to more than 90% of those calls without police involvement. You always could call upon them, but knowing that the first instinct would be able to respond to them without asking the police to do so, it changed their nature.
But see, you have a program right now in New York City. It's a pilot program called Be Heard.
Yes.
And it's very similar to what you have been proposing, except it's just a pilot program. But what the testimony has shown is that about 60% of the calls that go to Be Heard are not eligible to have a social worker or a psychiatric person respond because the people who are involved are suicidal or a danger, and so you need a police officer. So how effective can your program be in relieving the police of that burden if so many of the calls are still going to require a cop?
So I have heard from a number of experts who've been involved not only in the thinking behind Be Heard, but even the implementation about how this administration has really kneecapped its ability to succeed through a lack of funding, through a lack of support, and even just the question of the interoperability between 911 and 988 that the actual calls are getting through. This is a sign of an administration that isn't interested in pursuing this. And part of the reason I'm running for mayor is that it's time to have someone who leads this city who is sincerely interested in fulfilling the promise of these pilot programs, delivering that safety, because we're not seeing it right now.
But see, if in fact the numbers are accurate and 60% of the calls require a police officer to respond, even a domestic violence case, would you have to change your mind about relieving the police of this responsibility?
The outcome is always the most important thing. And even if it is 60%, that would still mean 40% that you're reducing from police responsibility that would allow them to increase their response times to serious crimes across the city.
So when I asked you a question the other day, you said, for me, the number one most important thing is the outcome of public safety. Whatever can create the outcome, I will consider. Does that mean you might have to hire more cops?
Look, I've said that I believe the current headcount that we have is an appropriate headcount, but as I've told you, it's an outcome-oriented approach to all of our policies. And to me, we keep talking about if we're going to hire more police officers, and yet there isn't a recognition of the fact that when I started this race, about 200 officers were leaving the department every month. Now it's 350 a month.
How are you going to get more people to apply for the job if it's so difficult to do?
I think the first thing is that you make sure that it's a job that's possible to fulfill.
But so you're really saying that you are open to hiring more police officers if the need arises?
What I'm saying is that I think we have the appropriate number of officers right now, and that I think the key thing is how to retain more of them such that we don't see this exodus.
You know, what's interesting to me is that Rodney Harrison, who was the former chief of department of the NYPD when Dermot Shea was the police commissioner, actually supports your approach to doing this. I wonder what his endorsement of your plan means to you and to your campaign, and does that make him a candidate to become the police commissioner?
You know, it was very meaningful to have the conversations that we had and to see his support for the Department of Community Safety, because it showcases what we've been saying, which is that this is a plan that we created speaking to police officers, speaking to those who have seen this up close, and knowing that this is actually something that would help us retain our officers and actually deliver on the promise of public safety.
So, but why do you have these people like Andrew Cuomo, like Mayor Adams, like Curtis Sliwa, who say, oh yeah, he's just going to have somebody with a clipboard respond to a case of, somebody who's an EDP or somebody who's involved in a domestic dispute, and they say that's not appropriate, that the person could be in danger. What's your answer to that?
My answer is that many of my opponents, chiefly Andrew Cuomo, would prefer to debate a mythical version of myself than the person that I actually am. They would prefer to focus on tweets from 2020 as opposed to the platform of 2025. And they prefer to do that because they know that our ideas are actually popular. And what we are putting forward is a response to New Yorkers' needs that goes beyond the failed ideas and policies that they've heard from these old politicians.
What you're really saying is that those tweets of 2020 you've evolved from that. You've changed from that. You've changed your views.
Yes, those are out of step with the campaign that we are running, and it's been
But
clear
out
throughout
of step
it.
with how you feel.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you've totally changed your mind.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to leave it right there for now, but we will be right back with more questions from Zohran Mamdani. And I actually said, we are back with the Queen's Assemblyman who's trying to rewrite the political playbook in New York City. You may wonder why I called you the Queen's Assemblyman.
Please.
It's because I don't have to say your name. Just joking.
I'll take it.
No, anyway, I want to talk about education.
Yeah.
It's something that people care a lot about. And I wonder, I know that you've talked about the possibility of changing mayoral control. It's something that mayors have fought for. I wonder how you would change it.
I've made this critique based on a feeling that there is too little involvement of our parents, of our educators, of our students in our vision for what education looks like in the country's largest school system. And I've heard again and again, especially with the way in which this administration has approached it, this inability to actually get them to fulfill so much of what's necessary to deliver excellence in our classrooms. I mean, as you said, I'm a Queen's Assembly member.
What would you do? I mean, would you be giving control to a Board of Education? Would you have local community school boards, or would you just change the hierarchy at both the Board of Education and the committee that controls the schools?
I'm frankly considering anything that can increase the involvement of so many of the people who are at the heart of this.
Do you want to go back to local boards of education? I mean,
you cannot go back. I think too often we're told that we only have two choices: the past or the present. And I think it's important.
How about the future?
That's what I'm saying. that's the promise of the campaign.
No, but so how do you envision it? I mean, what's your vision for how you have school control? Is it just putting more parents on the school board, or is it changing the way the mayor can control what goes on and have more input into what the the Department of Education does?
This is an active conversation of fleshing out this vision, because I think for far too long we've been told that the only options are either the past or the present, as you were saying. And for me, it comes back to we need to have an approach to our education system that is not a replica of what we've seen under the Adams administration, where we would pass the Class Size Reduction Act in Albany, and then we'd have to fight the mayor here to actually implement that reduction.
Well, you're going to have to find more money for the schools in order to build more schools to do class reduction.
Yes, but part of it is also to ensure that the agencies are fully staffed. The School Construction Authority, which has such a large role to play in building these classrooms, has 111 vacant positions. And part of that is because this is a city administration that has very little interest in actually having staff.
How about charter schools? Eva Moskowitz, who's the head of the Success Academy, is having a demonstration because she's concerned that you won't support the increase in charter schools.
I've been skeptical of charter schools, and I've made my critiques. Those are all on the record. And I've also said that my skepticism and my critique does not preclude me from meeting New Yorkers who feel otherwise, because this is the importance of leading this city. It's one where I'm both honest and open.
Well, I mean, if you talk to parents, the parents who send their kids to charter schools feel when they get their kids into a charter school that they've died and gone to heaven because they think that they have a better chance of success. What's your response to them and how much they respect the charter school system?
I am open to having that conversation with them. I've also heard from parents who've had very different experiences, and trying to get a real accurate sense of what it looks like to support our students across the 5 boroughs, and the focus on ensuring that every dollar that we actually win in Albany is one that comes back into these classrooms.
So how are you going to do, so you talk about winning dollars in Albany, given the cuts in federal funding and the stress it's going to put on the state budget, and then of course on the city budget, how are you going to have money to do all the things you want to do without making some cuts somewhere? And if you have to cut somewhere, where are you going to cut?
I think this is why it's so critical to increase revenue on the most profitable corporations in New York State by having the same top tax rate as New Jersey. I think it's important for us to consider increasing taxes on the top 1% of New York City earners who make $1 million or more by 2%. These are the proposals that we've put forward. So as you say, we don't simply have to play a game of what are we cutting from people who already have so little.
So one of the only ways that New York City can raise money is through the property tax. And when Bill de Blasio became mayor, he said, the one thing that we have to do is reform the property tax system. It hasn't happened.
Yes.
And it hasn't happened under him for 8 years. It hasn't happened under Eric Adams for 4 years. Is it going to happen under you if you win?
Yes.
How?
And I can say that because
How?
of the fact that...
And how do you want to change it?
I serve on the Real Property Tax Committee in the State Assembly, and I have sought to introduce legislation. I've been told in no uncertain terms that you can introduce legislation, but the scale of this issue is one that requires the leadership of the mayor. And the previous mayor, Mayor de Blasio, had a commission that released its findings on the final day of his administration. There are a number of
And nothing happened with it.
Nothing happened with it, but there are a number of interesting proposals within that commission.
Like?
The fact that we have a broken system that is perverse in the incentives that it places on who it taxes and who it doesn't. And it's not to say, as you've made clear, this will be easy. But the fact is, it is not a fair system. It is a system that does not inspire any sense of confidence. And we cannot reform this in the hopes of increasing the burden that we are placing on a disproportionate number of homeowners. We have to do one that inspires a sense of confidence, fairness, and that's why this current mayor, when trying to defend it in court, has lost time and again because you can't defend the system.
So, but are you saying that homeowners are going to have to pay more, or are you saying that people who own co-ops and condos are going to have to pay more? What about small property owners? What about big property owners? How do you want to divide the burden so that it will be, in your words, fair and equitable?
My goal is to have a conclusion of this process that can actually stand up in court, unlike the one that we have right now. And I won't stand here and tell you the exact specifics of this proposal because it's one that requires bringing in all the recommendations experts have made over the years, but there hasn't been the political will to follow through on.
So a lot of people have been talking about your positions on Israel. And I was wondering, you know, if you were mayor, I know that you in the past have supported things that would reduce people who do business with Israel. I wonder if, as mayor, you would ask the controller and the people who control the pensions to divest of companies that do business with Israel, but also divest of our large investment in Israeli bonds.
You know, I have made clear my critiques and their critiques on the basis of a valuing of international law. And I've said over the course of the primary campaign and through the general that I believe wherever we have become put in violation of international law through the policies of this current administration, that we should come back to compliance. For example, this current mayor not only had a meeting with Israeli settler leaders, but promised greater cooperation between this city and that movement.
What about the pension funds? Would you divest?
I think that we should not have a fund that is invested in the violation of international law.
So that would mean no Israeli bonds and no investments in companies that do business with Israel?
I think the current controller's approach, as he has taken it with Israel bonds, is the right approach.
And what about the other companies?
The other companies?
You know, companies that do business with Israel, BDS.
I think the most important thing is to figure out where we are directly implicated, and in the city pension fund purchasing Israel bonds, that to me is something that is a clear indication of our values, and we know that our values are actually with international law.
Well, we're going to have to leave it right there for now, but our conversation continues right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. Thank you for joining me. I've driven an electric car for almost a decade. So for me, the idea of getting into a self-driving taxi is, well, it's not scary at all. But for some New Yorkers, the jury is still out. They're weighing in on your point. Do you think we need self-driving robo-taxis in New York City?
Yeah, I'll be so down for that.
If they work, I guess.
I think they would be fine. The technology is pretty advanced.
They're still, not as developed as they could be.
I don't think we need any more cars on the streets. I think we need less cars.
Absolutely not over here.
Are you kidding? Self-driving cars?
There's too many people going this way, that way. No, it wouldn't work.
It's hard enough to drive in New York as it is.
Oh, no. I think you should always have a human driver.
You should always have a human driver?
Absolutely.
So, could there be...
What are the options? An alien or a robot? No, forget it. It's ridiculous.
Would you ride in one?
No.
No.
Why not?
Absolutely not. I wouldn't trust it.
I don't know. I just wouldn't feel safe.
Probably in New York City, no. I would have to...
Streets are too crowded, or...?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't feel comfortable.
No.
Why not?
I'm an old lady. Are you kidding me? I don't go for this stuff.
I get used to it. I get used to it.
Yeah, I've ridden in it in San Francisco.
You rode in one?
Yes.
What was that like?
Someone stood in front of it. It stopped. It felt very safe. The driver wasn't distracted. Obviously, there's no driver.
Would they be safer than human drivers?
I feel so.
I guess theoretically it could.
Questionable. You know, the human driver can deal with the unexpected.
No, they cannot.
Because?
No one is behind the wheel. It's just a robo taxi going wherever, nowhere.
They've had nothing but disasters out in California where the things have been blowing up and crashing, and who wants them on the streets? We got enough trouble.
At this point, they aren't tested enough, and human drivers, are relying on instinct.
For sure, I think so. I mean, especially like thinking about how many people drive under the influence.
It's safer, but I don't want it here.
Could they hurt New York City?
No.
Why not?
Because they're AI. I mean, they predict stuff.
Did you see the statistics about the robo taxis? Already they had 4 accidents across New York City already.
And all the guys,
good
taxi
point.
drivers got impacted by Uber, and now this will be the kill them.
Could they hurt New York City?
Who knows? I think it's the wrong way to go. I'm more interested in talking about the National Guard in New York City. Is that going to happen, and what is my opinion of that? That's what you should be asking.
Next week.
Next week? What day? I'll be here.
Does New York City need to have them so we can compete with the rest of the world?
Oh, I think that's nonsense.
We don't need it, but it would be helpful.
Probably, yes. I think we need to stay open to trying new things and give it a try.
Probably in the future.
But not now?
Not right now.
No, we're already a big scale city. We don't need to compete with nobody. We're already doing the darn thing by ourselves.